Not many people know this.
It's a weird movie.
There's weird, wild stuff in that movie.
Today on the show, we have my buddy, David Badgerow, who has worked at some of the biggest animation studios in the world, including Disney, Dreamworks, Blue Sky, and Sony Animation Studios. He's worked on films such as How to Train Your Dragon, the Angry Birds movie, Spies in Disguise, The Bad Guys, and The Wild Robot, just to name a few. Please welcome our friend, character animator, David Badgerow.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Welcome. Welcome to the show, my friend. Hello,
Yes.
my friend.
Hello. We're doing it.
We're doing it. We're doing the thing.
Indeed.
You, sir, are a jack of all trades and a master of all. You are...
Sure.
You are a musician, a impressionist, a mixologist, a roller coaster and tiki bar enthusiast.
Yes.
Even within the animation industry, you are a jack of all trades. You started out as a technical director, then you were a graphic designer in the art department, you were a final layout artist, then a layout artist, then a character animator.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite the journey, quite a lot of jobs to do.
Yes.
I'm just curious. So I want to go back through all of your jobs.
Some would say too many.
Some would say one too many.
Yes.
But I want to start with what you do now, which is a character animator.
Yes.
So what is a character animator?
So, character animation in animated films, we, at the most basic level, we are basically the actors. And you would say, well, aren't the actors the actors? And it is sort of it's a fun collaborative process. It's a lot like, we're a lot like puppeteers, except we're not the ones also speaking the voices. So
Right.
It's a case where very talented voice talent will come in and they will record the dialogue to like a series of storyboard drawings. And once editorial has cut all those together in a way that sounds like a very natural performance, it's handed to us. And we then listen to that performance and taking direction from the directors as well.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of take the characters and create a performance that matches that voice
Right.
often. And sometimes there's no dialogue and we're doing all those scenes as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. All the silent, all the pantomime stuff.
pantomimes, any fighting scenes, any
Yeah.
running and action and all that fun stuff. So
Right.
we are, nowadays, especially, we're more like puppeteers because I work at least in CG animation, which is sort of predominant in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And a whole nother army of talented people come before me, which is to say there's a bunch of people that create a character, design it, model it, which is to create a rig, like a puppet rig that's in the
Yeah.
computer,
Mm-hmm.
and they make it do all kinds of incredible things that then are handed to us.
Right.
And we are able to bring it to life.
Yeah,
So,
they make it posable so that you guys can do whatever you need to it to get
Yeah.
the most realistic performances.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that maybe a good way to say it is like, if we're doing our job right, we are creating a believable performance that helps facilitate the story. That is really what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I mean, you guys, like you said, you guys are kind of, you probably wouldn't say this, but you guys are half of the equation. You have your voice actors and then you have you guys. So
Mhm.
half of the performance is, split between you guys. You
Yeah.
guys do a lot more because you do the physical body of it.
Yes.
But
And not to take this off topic here, but like within that, it's funny because sometimes we get excellent voice performances that we, the animators, only hope we can live up to.
right.
And sometimes there are some very bad voice performances
Sure.
where the directors will literally say, we did the best we could. Could you please breathe some entertainment into this?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So-
because some people are really great, amazing actors, but they
Yeah.
might not bring the specific type of energy that character needs.
Mhm.
And, it's sometimes it just doesn't match, which
Yes.
is it's a shame, but
Yeah.
sometimes that's the case. And
It's
then
a-
you guys make up for it.
It's a bad sign when so there's a thing that happens on these movies where there's scratch dialogue where in order to just get the timing right with the editorial reels, in order
Yeah.
to time out the storyboards appropriately, they'll have people that are usually in-house in the studio that read these lines. They
Right.
they sort of stand in for the final actor in order to get it, in order to give someone like you something to work with to start doing previs and things
Sure.
like that. And then it's a shame when you get the final performance and it's worse, and you're like, oh no.
Well, but then we also have that, what do they call that thing? It's not like scratchitis, but it's something like that. It's like you have
you get married to the
scratch
yeah.
audio, like of the characters speaking, and you also get married to the scratch song, and maybe it's a song track that they took from a different movie that's just a stand-in for the time being, but you get so used to like the emotions that you felt when you hear it. And so it's like it's easy to just get like attached to it and go, okay, this is what we want it to be, exactly that, but then it doesn't really open it up for exploration of what the real voice actor could do, or what the real composer of the music could do, you know. So
I would say that at DreamWorks we're probably super lucky to mostly have excellent voice talent, and it's almost never bad. And in fact sometimes it's so, I've worked there long enough now to have seen instances where I'll see a line in a movie where it's scratch, and the line in the movie I'm like, that's never gonna work, like that's the real line in the movie, and then in the scratch dialogue it sounds terrible, and then the real person will come in and they're so good,
they knock it out of the park.
They somehow find a way to make a bad line good, in my opinion, where I'm like, oh well, now it's almost like, well, now I get it, now they said it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, they were imagining the pro actor saying it all along, I guess so.
There you go.
So what made you interested in working in the animation industry in the first place? Was there a specific movie that you saw when you were a kid?
I have a very specific answer to this.
Oh, cool.
And for me, well, I guess I could say that I think I thought I was going to be a comic book illustrator when I was very young.
Yeah.
Like when I was a little kid, I was like, I'm going to draw comics. Like that's what I want to do. Like I was a fan of Sunday morning, newspaper comics and actual comic books. And I was like, this looks like the greatest job. And the idea, I think it was similar, where it was like, oh, it's storytelling, it's through drawings.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool. Also, I remember like from a very young age, I would play with Legos a lot. And my parents had this excellent movie channel that I would watch that had a lot of excellent movies. I remember specifically watching Star Wars and being like, this is so cool. And I would reenact a lot of scenes from Star Wars using Legos.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, yeah, man, like this is so cool. Like, and I remember thinking, even as a little kid, I was like, it's so cinematic. Like I remember thinking that it was so dramatic looking. And I'm like, that's rad. And I think at the time I didn't really understand the idea of like, oh, that, because at that age I was like, this is just like a historical document that was handed to us by like movie gods. Like it never occurred to me like
Wars?
People made this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Just like this is just like a thing that happened, Yeah. And they filmed it somehow.
Right.
And I didn't understand anything about what I was looking at until I remember specifically going to, well, I was watching animated films and stuff. I remember watching like The Great Mouse Detective is one of the earliest films I saw in theaters. I was very young. And eventually I remember going to see The Lion King. And I remember super specifically, it was like the moment, like the lightning moment for me was it's after Nala and Simba are like they're kids and they're wrestling.
Yeah.
And then they fall into the elephant graveyard and boosh, the smokes, like the whatever it is goes, the geyser. Yeah. And they're both like, huh. And then camera follows them up that ledge. The camera goes through the two of them and they go, whoa. And there's a rack focus. Yeah. And reveals the entire landscape. And I remember in that moment being like, I never knew that something so awesome was possible in animation. Yeah. And now that's what I have to do forever. Like, wow. I don't know how I got to figure out how they did that. And I'm going to do that, was my thought in the theater. I'm like, that's it.
That's amazing.
I think that from then on, I was pretty obsessed.
Yeah. So. I mean, what a cool moment. Of course you're obsessed with that moment. That's like, I've referenced that moment so many times in college when I did my short film in college. Literally, like we had a shot that we called the elephant graveyard shot, because like it's just so amazing what they did with hand-drawn animation and made it feel like Star Wars, made it feel like a cinematic, amazing moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's so cool. So that moment was like, all right, I need to do this.
And I think 1 year later, a Goofy movie came out, and a Goofy movie has extraordinarily cinematic, like, what's the right word for this? Like, sort of like super dynamic camera angles that some of them are actually CG assisted.
Right.
And there's a sequence that I call, I don't know what the real name of it is, but I call it Junction. And it's when Goofy is at, here comes our junction, son. Right.
Yeah.
And whatever he says,
left. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then whoosh. Yeah. And I remember being like, why does it look so crazy and awesome? And then later on in my life, I was like, oh, it's because it was CG. And I think that also started to send me down the road of once like Toy Story 1 came out.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I was like, what am I looking at?
Yeah, totally.
And starting to understand what that was, and starting to get super obsessed with computer graphics, and then being like,
totally,
oh my God, like people can make an entire film using this technology. I'm like, oh, well, I think that's exactly what I'm going to do then.
Right. Right. And it's all just tools, right? So it's all tools that are just to make the art better. That's the hope, right?
I think I was extra interested in the fact that you can move the camera in a much more dynamic way in 3D animation. I think that drew me into it.
Yeah, honestly, Great Mouse Detective, that was one of the first times that they ever actually used 3D to like draw the cogs in the clock tower at the end. It's one of my favorite scenes ever.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of one of the first times that they used both 2D, 3D in a major animated film.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you bring up Great Mouse Detective.
Yeah. Your favorite.
It's all connected.
Yeah,
man.
Man.
My favorite. That is my favorite.
Yep.
So once you decided I'm gonna be an animator, that's what I want to do, or I want to work in animation, how did you start down that path? Did you go, okay, I need to leave? Where were you living at the time?
So I grew up in Michigan.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, I feel like this is a common story for a lot of animators. Well, a lot of people in animation, which is like a lot of us come from very tiny towns. My town, I dare anybody to be tinier than my town. It's very tiny. It's less than 5,000 people. And it was one of those things where I was like, the thought of getting into movies seemed way too gigantic.
Sure.
And my mother, God bless her, both my parents were very supportive. But my mom was, I think she was like, oh, this kid is gonna fly the coop, and like he's gonna get as far away from this place as he can if it means he can make whatever he wants to make.
Yeah.
And so, but I think she and me also were both like, well, what do you do? And I started going to private art school. I went to this school called Interlochen. That's very
cool,
very famous worldwide, but it just happens to be in Michigan. And people from all over the world come there. And I studied, like you said earlier, I studied piano for 4 years there, and I did art for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like art education, that seems like the way to go.
Right.
And then simultaneously at home, I was getting my hands on CG animation tools.
Yeah.
And I was just like, if I just get my hands on the tools and see what it's like in there, then I can start to understand the art form and like what is involved.
Right.
And this is like back when you would buy videotapes from online, which I did. I bought like VHS tapes of like how to animate using like Hash Animation Master, True Space, these things that aren't Maya,
Right.
And then I remember a person online being like, oh, you're interested in CG animation? What are you doing? You should get your hands on Maya. And they like sent me Maya.
Oh,
I remember opening Maya and being like,
Right.
Like what?
It's so overwhelming the first time you open that program.
And I think the first major step that I took towards that was, I don't know how I found out about these schools, but I was like, well, what are the real schools? And at the time, and to a large degree still, Ringling down in Sarasota, it was the big one. And so I went to the Ringling pre-college program. And
cool.
That was like, oh my God, to me. I was like, this is awesome. This is where it's happening. But yeah, starting to really do real stuff with Maya, with real instructors. And I was like, yeah, man, like that, it's starting to become real, basically. And whatever, the usual, like took all the art classes in high school and stuff like that. And doing I was doing independent CG projects with like my friends. I remember we did a CG movie that it was a visual effects movie that we entered into the Detroit like student art or student film festival.
Mm-hmm.
And we won best in show.
Wow, that's cool.
And it was amazing. I was like, oh my God, great.
That's a good confirmation at an early age of like, you're doing, we're doing the right thing here, maybe.
It's funny. I had this other buddy of mine, Derek, he was like my partner in crime. And the two of us were big CG. They called us the CG sharks in high school. And we did all this CG stuff. And that was
high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
But what we're doing, like,
No, but even to even get a moniker that's CG shark in high school.
It's because nobody, that was like our identity.
But I'm saying in high school, most people haven't even broken into CG yet.
Right.
So that's kind of huge that you were already kind of like doing all that stuff as early as high school.
Yeah. I guess we were, we were learning everything. So like me and my buddy Derek were like the intense, like, let's learn Premiere, let's learn After Effects, let's learn all the software and make stuff with it. And that was the first thing that we sent in for a competition, and it won. And then I also back True Space, that those people they also held a CG competition. I sent in another thing to them, and that also won. Wow. And I remember being like, that was when I was at Ringling, and I remember being okay, maybe,
that's amazing though.
And so that was like, okay, I guess I should keep going.
Yeah, I mean, at a young age, that stuff is what actually like propels you to go forward, because you go, am I any good at this? Is this like what?
Is there any
what am I even
chance
doing
at all?
here?
Yeah. And I think, and that was like just enough to. So then I ended up going to UCLA for school. I ended up not going to Ringling. And truly just because I just wanted to be where the studios were.
Smart.
And I was like, oh my God, there's like Rhythm and Hues, and there's Sony, and there's Digital Domain, and these places in Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's where the action is. That's where I want to be, because I'll do my internships there. That was my thought.
Oh, cool. So you were at UCLA, and then did you do internships while you were there? Was that? Yeah. And did that lead to the job, or was it just they were good resume builders as you went?
I think they were just good resume builders.
Okay.
I worked at MGM Studios before it became Sony. Before it got absorbed into Sony, which was super fun just from like a I Love Hollywood perspective.
Yeah.
And I worked in their graphic design department. And
did they have a live lion out front, just growling as you walked in the door every morning?
Yeah, you pat the lion as you go in. Yeah, say hello, feed him a little piece of meat. It's all good. It was just fun to see how things functioned and how that. And it's also fun, like my boss when I was an intern, she was a real hard ass, and it's one of those things where I remember at the time I remember being like, wow, this lady's a hard ass, but I know she's right.
Right.
And I won't understand why she's right until after this whole thing is over, because I'm not smart enough yet. You know what I mean? Because she was sort of trying to help. She was trying to like do her best to guide me. Yeah. And be like, she would give me assignments. They were really great about like, do this, like go off and make a one sheet, for us, like a poster essentially. Mm-hmm. And I would bring it back and they would be like, oh, that's a way to go, but it's bad. Oh, no. You know what I mean? And she's like, okay, this is not very good. Right. But let me show you like an example of what we do. And she pulled out some one sheets, and she's like, she was explaining to me, she's like, you want to have like a singular concept that everything helps lift up. She's like, you have like and she's like, see what we did here in this one sheet? Like, this is our big dramatic idea here. And now like, these are the supporting elements. Like what you're doing is too cluttered. And I was like, I remember being like, oh my God, okay, yeah. She really understands, you know what I mean?
Right,
like, trying to like, oh my God, how much of this can I remember? In that moment, it was like fast forwarding through a college course, and I'm like trying to write down notes.
So like, be a sponge.
Yeah.
Suck it in.
Truly. And now I think about that experience a lot, where I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like seeing all of the flaws now from what I was doing. Yeah. And remembering the things she showed me. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, of course that was the solution.
Yeah. And those are big like pivot points in your career too, where it feels like somebody actually takes the time to like show you something instead of just being like, oh, they didn't do good, and then let you like, fail. And basically they give you the opportunity to be like, here is the way we do it. And then you go, oh, I learned from it. And then you are better.
I just said this to somebody at work today. There's one of the PAs was asking me who wants to get into art. She was asking me about my experiences learning at the studio, and I actually said something that I really appreciate that people do sometimes is that they don't say it's. I said it's actually very harmful to say like, "Oh, that looks good," when it's not,
right,
and to be like, thanks for doing that. This looks good, and then you don't learn anything. I said like it's way more valuable to be like, like, can I tell you something about that? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You don't have to be mean about it, but at least to be like, I have some criticisms. Like,
Right.
would you mind if I gave you some advice?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. Those are the people that are super valuable, because they're going to reveal to you. Not only are they going to like tell you, you're doing this when you should be doing this, but then they'll lay more information on like, and by the way, also do this. So
right.
Yeah, that's super helpful.
You actually can get better. And that's the whole point, right? We're always trying to get better as artists in general. And especially in the jobs that we do, you kind of have to get better and better and better as you go in order to stay competitive. So once you finished your internships and everything, now you're out, you've finished school, you're going out into the workforce. Where was your first gig?
In my senior year of college, I got an internship that turned into a summer job where I was actually doing 2 internships simultaneously at 2 different graphic houses. And one of them found out about the other one and was like, so we think that you're doing 2 jobs. And they're like, would you quit the other one if we hired you?
You were dating 2 people.
And one of them committed. and I was like, absolutely. Yeah. And so I ended up, it was a little place in Burbank called Grapevine Productions. And that was super awesome. It was like a whirlwind.
Yeah.
It was fun because it was like real world experience at moving at a breakneck speed. It was a little startup company on Olive Avenue. And it was actually right next to the NBC studios, the old NBC studios. And it was amazing.
With Mr. Carson.
Mr. Jay Leno was there at the time.
Mr. Jay Leno took over. And he just showed up. He showed up there, and he just was, he showed up at the.
There's a lot of little graphic design houses around here,
Little graphic design. Little graphic design across the street.
That actually, there was one day I came out where I was leaving work, and I remember somebody was playing Sugar Ray very loudly. And I remember saying to my boss and me, we're walking to our cars, and I said, who the hell is playing Sugar Ray that loud? And he went, it's probably Sugar Ray. And he pointed at the studio, and I was like, oh, right. I said, they're rehearsing for the Leno show right now. So, right. Here's a band that's, the band have a very weird name these days. Well, here they are, folks. Sugar Ray. Terrible. Anyway.
I love it. So after this internship, which was kind of like your first gig, right?
Sorry, I didn't answer your question.
No, that's you're totally fine.
Yeah.
You're totally fine. So South Park was kind of the first, that was like the first major, like, oh my gosh, what? I'm working at South Park.
The thing is, I accidentally applied to South Park, where I was on this there's this website called Creative Heads, where it's still around, where you put in all of your stuff, you put in all your resume and your reel and and I remember I was just browsing one day, and then I was like, South Park is looking for technical directors, and I remember being like, what's that? And so I clicked on what I thought was just see more information. And it showed me all the, like, these are all the skills that you need to have, and and this is what is involved. And I was like, I'm like, that sounds like something I could do. Okay. But then I just kept scrolling.
Yeah.
And then I got a cold call from the line producer, and it was like, hello, this is South Park. We saw that you were interested. Would you like to come in for an interview? And I went. South Park has this, I don't know if they still do this, but they used to do this fun, like, Survivor style hiring process where they would hire 3 people for 1 job, or for sometimes 2 jobs if you're lucky.
Interesting.
And that's what it was. I came in for this interview, and they told me up front, they're like, we'll pay you for this. It is a 2-week trial period, and it's you versus 2 other guys. And
no pressure.
Yeah. And well, for me, I was like, well, I got nothing to lose, because at best I get the job, and at worst I get paid and I get experience.
Yeah.
And I won the competition.
Wow.
And I went on to work. This was all the way back in season 12 of South Park.
Wow.
And if we had time, I could tell you all kinds of hilarious stories of what it's like to work at South Park. It's ridiculous.
Sure, give me one.
Matt and Trey are super funny people, extremely hardworking people. I've never seen people work that hard in my life.
Yeah.
Like South Park famously, all the artists work approximately 90 to 100 hours a week. And you just, you stay there forever. And because the whole show is made in 6 days. And so that documentary, 6 Days to Air, is super accurate. That's exactly what it's like to work there. And all the way down to they include a little bit of this about how Matt and Trey, I think for their own sanity, but also to maybe keep the rest of the gang going, they just are silly at work. And
well, that's good.
There's a PA system there. I think, well, whatever. I was gonna say I think they're in a different building now, but like in the building that they used to be in, there's a large PA system so that they can pick up the phone and say, "Come to editorial now." And they're always referring to Matt and Trey, like,
right.
Click. But it's almost like a Pavlovian thing. Like if you hear the thing click, you're like, you stop working and you listen for the announcement, like right. What? Okay. Doesn't refer to me, back to work. Right.
Yeah.
But you'll be there at like 3 a.m. and Trey specifically you would pick up the thing, just farts into it, hangs it up. And we would just be like, okay, it's just Trey farting into the PA system. Sweet. Sure. and then he would talk in voices because he does a lot of those voices.
Right.
Eric Stow is the producer, but he is Butters. He's who they base Butters off of. So
Butters.
Yeah. So they would like Butters to the editorial room. Butters to the editorial room, please. Yeah, thank you very much. And they would also do Jimmy a lot. And
yeah,
so there's a team meeting up here upstairs in the kitchen. Like you would get that over the PA.
Right.
And
it's like you were living in South Park while you were working on South Park.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Mr. Garrison is a voice that he used to do as just like silly voice, apparently, when he was in college training. And so he would still do it when he would talk to people like Adrian Beard, who's the head of the storyboard department. Mm-hmm. And he would be like, "Oh my God, I can't do the voice." But he'd be like, "Oh my God, traffic was a total hell this morning." Like he would do that. And you would just kind of be like, "Did I just hear Mr. Garrison?" And then there would be crazy, like, they would be like, "Everybody come to the main lobby area right now." And then you'd go to the main lobby area. And Trey had just purchased one of those money tornado machines.
Wow.
And he was like, "Hey guys," that's how he talks, like his regular voice. He'd be like, "Hey guys, so everybody line up. And what I'm going to do is turn on the machine and I pull a ton of money out of my bank account and one by one, you're just going to go in there and whatever you grab, you just get to keep." And they're like, "Okay."
Best bonus ever.
And and that was one of the Jimmy moments. And now that I think about it, he was like, he called it Cash Grab Monday. Cash Grab Monday in the foyer. He said, it was like, what?
So, now all we get is bagels on Monday at some studios.
We're working there, like from a making the show perspective, by the way. I remember Frank Agone, who's the producer, when I had my Welcome to South Park, meeting.
Yeah.
I think he put it really nicely, which was, he was like, "Well, welcome to the show." He goes, it's hard work. He's like, "We work 100 hours a week. I'm sure you're aware of that." He's like, he goes, "It's the closest thing to working at Saturday Night Live in animation." He's like, "Because we make the show in 6 days."
Yeah.
And he's like, "And it's going to be a whirlwind." And from the perspective of just like the ground troops,
mm-hmm.
It was magic to me to watch the show just like coalesce at rapid speed. It was like watching a writing. It was truly was like, if you were interested in writing, it was cool to see them write the show, because a new version of the show gets spat out of editorial every day.
Right.
And you watch like, all right, here's like the mega rough version of the idea, the concept. And like 2/3 of the episode exists. And then like the next day, okay, Here's the same idea. Now it's the dialogue's better. Now the show's a little tighter. You can watch them move all the Lego pieces around, and
in real
it's
time.
genius. You're like, oh, look how they improved that, and they changed this, they did that, and then by the time you're getting to the last 2 days of production, you're like, oh man, they've solved all of these story issues. They've filled in these holes.
Yeah.
They've got the act 1 going now. Like, they would always write the show kind of backwards. They would be like, all right, here's act 2 and act 3. This leads to that. This will lead to that. We'll figure out what to do for the intro and tie it all in. So
wow, that's so cool.
Super
What an
fun.
experience.
Yeah.
What a first experience.
Yeah.
And but so your job, so you got this job as a technical director.
Yeah.
So what did this entail?
So if anybody out there knows what real technical directors do,
right,
it was pretty much nothing to do with
it
my
was
job.
The opposite.
Yeah. In fact, the guy who sat next to me, Jeff Gulan, he was hilarious guy and very cynical. And I remember one day he made a joke where he's like, why do they call our job technical director? He goes, technically, I direct my hand to my mouse. And I was like, okay. But this job was like, basically, I called the job everything except animation.
Right.
Because it was, we did everything from turning backgrounds from the art department into real backgrounds in the South Park world. That's a whole technical process. Creating characters, in some cases designing characters. There's a lot of background characters.
Yeah.
So the TD department gets to design them and rig them. They have their own system for rigging characters for South Park. The whole show's done in Maya, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
It's like killing a fly with a cannonball.
In 6 days, it's done in Maya?
Yeah. Well, it's actually what makes it so fast.
Wow.
Because, everything is, we won't get, there's a lot of technical reasons that we won't get into why Maya makes it so fast.
Well, I mean,
also, the show renders in a split second because it looks like it looks.
Right.
So yeah, they like spits through the render farm mega fast. But, and everything's super quick. I guess that's the only technical thing I'll say is like, moving around in Maya with stuff that simple.
Right. It's not heavy. The characters aren't heavy.
It would be way slower to do it in After Effects, frankly. Yeah.
Wow.
I must have screenshot. I have video of this somewhere. But Trey said, team meeting in the kitchen. Team meeting in the kitchen with that voice. And everyone being like, first of all, we rarely have team meetings. Second of all, in the kitchen? I'm like, something's wrong. And we went upstairs. And as soon as I get upstairs, I look on the table and I'm like, okay, there's a sheet cake with the Family Guy Season 1 DVD artwork as the artwork on the sheet cake. And then I see Trey has the Emmy, the physical Emmy in his hand. He's like, hi, everybody. So as you know, Family Guy had said in a speech one time how they were sick of losing to us at the Emmys. And so that's why they decided to make Blue Harvest. Because they wanted to make something where they would actually win the Emmy and not have to compete with us anymore. So naturally, that's when we decided to them out of their Emmy by submitting Imagination Land as a long form content. And congratulations, we won and we them out of the Emmy. He did that. And then he's like, so what I want to do now, we have a lovely cake, as you can see here, with some lovely artwork on the top. And what I want to do is I want to have Jenny, she was the head of the TD department. I want to have Jenny come up here and I want you to take this Emmy and I want you to shove it in the Family Guy cake. and she's like, okay. And so she just took it, went wham, slammed it in. And then Frank Agone swept in, took a picture of that. And then the very next day on southpark.com, the main page was just a photo of that. And on the bottom it said, we won an Emmy. And I was like, what a thing to do. I thought it was hilarious at the time.
It's very funny.
Also, I was really shocked to see. I was like, okay, it's one thing that Matt and Trey hate Family Guy. I love Family Guy.
Me too.
Love it.
It's my absolute favorite.
I love Family Guy.
I love Peter. I love Stewie. Stewie's one of my favorites.
Oh man, you can do such a good. It's so good.
And then I like Herbert a lot.
Oh,
so sometimes he's pretty fun to do.
I forgot you can do it so well. Damn, dude. Yeah,
it's really just those three.
I can only do a bad Peter.
Yeah, Peter. Peter talks like this.
And so, one day where I was like, oh, Matt and Trey, okay, makes sense. And then
You would think they'd have more appreciation for one another, though. Like, as
Yeah.
it's such a small group, but I guess, you know what? It's hard to get into that position, so people are competitive, right?
Well,
So-
apparently they love almost everyone except for Family Guy. They
Yeah.
love Simpsons. They super love King of the Hill,
right.
and but they hate Family Guy. And
After South Park,
yes.
now you're heading off into the industry and going,
Yeah.
okay, well, that was a really cool job that I got to do.
Yeah.
But it wasn't necessarily the thing that you wanted to do personally, as far as artistically.
Yeah.
Technical director wasn't quite it, you know.
Well, so here's the thing: is I had mentioned before how they sort of started to split us into groups of speciality,
Right.
right? And they were like, "Oh, this guy has a 2D background, kind of," and so I was so honored that they gave me the job of all the gore and disgusting stuff and vomit and blood, and because all that stuff is 2D animation.
Right.
They have a little tool they wrote in Maya that
Yeah.
essentially works like a sketch pad, and you draw like you would flip, right? Like how you flip, and you do 2D and it was super. I thought it was super fun. They would come by with the scripts, and I would flip through the script quickly,
Yeah.
and notate like, oh, that guy gets his head blown off, or
Yeah.
that guy gets shot in the head, and like, or oh, Kenny throws up here,
Yeah.
and I would be like, well, I'm doing those, you know, and
Cool.
I would set off creating the artwork for that, and you would create basically like a little self-contained flip book you'd pass that to the animation team,
Right.
and then they just play it. They play your little movie clip when someone gets their head blown off.
Right.
Like it becomes the thing that I would draw.
So you basically became a 2D effects artist.
100%.
Essentially.
That was what
at South Park.
That was what I did. But then I actually asked them, I was like, I'm really interested in layout. And the 2D department also handles layout. And so I'm like, please give me as much layout. And so they gave me a lot of layout stuff. And I had the time of my life doing the layout stuff.
That's so cool.
Loved it.
Yeah.
They would even let me do creative shots, which is to say, like, we have this shot. Art department doesn't have time to get to it. You just create the whole shot. Like, design the background.
Wow.
Do it all. And then just show it to Matt and Trey. And if it's good, it goes in. You know? And I was like, this is great. You know, like, I think this is, and like that moment in college, I was just like, maybe this is what I'm going to do, you know?
Yeah.
In grad school, I also won Best in Show for my student film in graduate school.
Wow.
And when I did, DreamWorks was there and they saw it. And Kim Mackey, who used to be the HR person, came to me and was like, "Hi, are you interested in working at DreamWorks?" Like,
Yeah.
yes.
What was the name of your student film?
Jungle Gym.
Jungle Gym.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you can look it up, and it's terrible. So it came out in 2006, folks.
And you're also a vampire.
Yeah. So my professor
Yeah.
at UCLA, Valerie Laterra-Spletzer, who was a cornerstone of the final layout department at DreamWorks since the Road to El Dorado, or maybe further back than that. I think she
cool.
actually started on The Prince of Egypt.
Oh, cool.
And
cool.
she's friends with Kim Mackey. She was there when Kim Mackey came to me to be like, would you be interested in working at DreamWorks? And I was like, I can't yet because I'm still in school, was my response.
Right.
And so a year later, this is now after South Park, I get cold called by my professor. And she was like, hey, guess what? I just got promoted to supervisor. I'm like, congrats, Val. And she's like, yeah, so my old position is open and I think you should apply like today.
Yeah.
And that was one of those insane moments where I remember because working at South Park, you just work all day.
Yeah.
So I remember like working like a 15-hour day, going home, slamming together a reel. And then what did I do? I stayed up all night doing that. And then I drove to DreamWorks before South Park started that morning. So I drove up to Glendale, dropped it off at the gate, gave it to Val. God bless her. She took it, like passed it through the gate.
Right.
This is back when PDI existed.
Mm-hmm.
PDI
DreamWorks in Northern California. Yeah.
She inter-officed it up to PDI and for review. And within a week, I had an interview at DreamWorks.
Wow. It's funny because you mentioned this, and I've found this with a few of my friends who I've spoken to, that they also kind of got like a first gig from a teacher.
Hey.
Or a teacher like helped facilitate the first gig.
Yep.
And it's so cool how that goes back to what we were talking about earlier too, about the like giving back thing, where it's like somebody actually like sends the elevator back down to you. You know? And
certainly.
it's like, hey, come on up.
Yeah. I do remember being nervous where I was like, ooh, like I really want to work at DreamWorks because I think that's my favorite animation company.
Yeah.
Final layout seems more of a technical position than an artistic position, but maybe I'll just want to go there and learn.
Yeah.
You know?
It's DreamWorks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because my other thought was like, well, maybe I should like work at a smaller studio in a job I actually really want to do was the other thought.
Right.
But also part of me was like, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. Like, I don't know if I'm skilled enough.
Right. But at this point, you're interested in, well, you've been doing effects, you've been doing camera,
right?
You've been doing layout,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Camera work. And so now you're like, okay, I would be interested in camera and also character animation. Those are kind of the two like focuses, right? Those
my end goal was always character animation.
Yeah.
And I think my professor knew that.
Right.
And she actually told me, she prepped me for the interview briefly. And she was like, don't tell them that you want to be an animator because they're not going to hire you.
Right.
She's like, just say you want to be a layout artist.
Yeah.
And so that was what I did. And it was similar to when I went to Ringling, where I was just like, well, I just kind of want to see how the sausage is made.
Right.
Like,
and learn.
I want to see real people doing the real thing.
Yep.
And so I always say that when, I was a 26-year-old and going to DreamWorks was like, I freaking broke into Hogwarts. Yeah. And I was like, there's the real freaking wizards flying around at Hogwarts. And I'm just some like,
class.
Yeah. And I'm like some non-talented bystander. Yeah. I was like, what? Like, there's James Baxter and, look at there's Dave Burgess and people like that. I was freaking out. I actually had a really fun time in layout I was in that department for 3.5 years. And almost immediately
layout finaling or
layout finaling?
Layout finaling.
Layout finaling, yeah. And almost immediately I started bugging the out of animators to be like, I would love to learn from you. And it was just like cold call, like door to door knocking. It felt like where I'm like, can I learn from you? Can I learn from you?
Right.
Like, who's going to mentor me? And it's a good handful of animators. God bless them. They gave me their time.
Yeah. People are so giving with their time.
Yeah. Certain people in particular, I was just like, Jesus, I couldn't believe it.
In this industry, in the animation industry, people seem to be a little bit more generous.
Yeah. And it was one of those things. I like to say the phrase, if you make friends with enough doormen and eventually one of them opens the door. And that's kind of what it felt like, where it was like
saying.
Sean Sexton, who's a great animation mentor, literally from Animation Mentor.
Yeah.
He gave me great feedback. I could
one
go
of the heads of animation at DreamWorks.
He's
also.
now one of the heads of animation and has been for a while.
Yeah.
But a bunch of people whose names I could go down a big list, but they're all great. And Dave Burgess was a big one of them. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things where they just kept giving me animation tests and reviewing them and giving me feedback.
Wow.
And there used to be, there still is, this thing called the 11-second club.
Yeah.
That is a great, I highly recommend doing it.
Oh, yeah.
I did that many times. And Dave Burgess, since he's also an animation mentor guy, he's like, oh, well, you should do the contest. And if you make it into the finalist round, then I'll take a look at more of your work. Like, he did it as a challenge.
Yeah.
Too. And I remember that month I got 6th place. Wow. And I was like, I'm a finalist. It was, I think it's out of 150 people or something like that.
And 6, that's wow.
And so I was so excited. I was like, I did it. And so he, at his word,
as promised,
he started to give me feedback on stuff more directly.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of made it known within a year or two that I was like, I would like to get into a more creative department. I let everyone know that, including HR. Right. Basically, there was this hilarious moment that was very unexpected. This is where the UCLA design thing comes back into play, where they literally did like a casting call to everyone. And they said, does anybody in this whole studio know After Effects really well? And do you also have a graphic design background? Oh, yeah. And can you do like 2D animation? Right. And I was like, I'm all of those things. I can do all that. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And so they said, okay, well, we have a project. It was a short film that we were doing where we need someone who can do that. So I did it. And I apparently did it well enough that they were like, oh, okay. Are you interested in more of this work? And I was like, yes. And then I did it enough where I was on a little movie that not many people have heard of called Turbo. And, and on Turbo, I think they said, they were like, we actually have a need for somebody who just can do this all full time. And so that was the end of my job in layout. And they said, you are now officially a member of the art department.
Oh,
and
cool.
now you are doing graphic design work and motion graphics. I mean, it still is one of the happiest moments of my life. Like when I switched over on Turbo, God, it was so much fun. That movie is not very good, but from my perspective, I've never been so happy to drive to work every day.
Yeah.
I was just like, I can't believe I get to do this now.
Yeah.
And
it's huge.
It was just like, I remember like designing things and animating them. And I'm like, this is going to be in the movie? That was my thought.
Also, you went from a very technical job,
Yeah,
which it takes a lot of skill, a lot of technical skill by itself. But then now you've switched to a much more creative job where you're like focused on, you're designing things out of your head after, you know, they wrote down a description and now you're going, okay, that would look like this.
Well,
And
now my boss was Mike Isaac, who's the art director. And I was like, oh my God, I get to learn from this dude and Rich Daskus. Rich Daskus was the production designer. I'm probably mixing those two up, by the way. But God, that was one of those moments like being at MGM where I was just like, oh my God, any moment that they can take to teach me something
I'll take it.
Hugely valuable.
Yeah.
They would be like, this is almost it, but maybe do this. And then they would even be like, by the way, here's some principles about design. They would start teaching me like art principles. I was like, ooh, like, oh my God, I'm getting like micro graduate school right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So cool. And then I went directly from working on that to another movie that definitely no one's heard of called Boo, because that movie got canceled.
Right. What did that job entail now that you're on this new movie?
Yeah.
So what would like be an assignment that they would give you?
One of the assignments was just like, oh, the chief of police sees that something is wrong. Like, there's a haunting in like Chicago, sound the alarm. And then there's a close up of her hand slamming the alarm button. And then they told me, they're like, when she hits this alarm button, all of the interfaces transform into alert mode. And so that means the graphics change, the colors change, the whole vibe of everything changes into like red alert on the Enterprise, you know? So that was a fun assignment to do. That was like just one of the many
So did they
assignments.
have reference for you, or was that just something that they literally just had a description and they were like, go?
I worked with Pete Maynes and Yuri Iori, they're both excellent designers. And those guys, I think, were doing the lion's share of the work in terms of laying down what the aesthetic was going to be for this stuff.
Okay.
So I work with them. They would sometimes just hand off fully finished like flat graphic designs. And then it was my job to bring those things into like the animation world, basically.
Okay.
And to design how they're going to evolve and mutate and transform. It's super fun.
So then after that, did you stay in the art department, or then you transitioned again soon after that, right?
So I'm still doing all the animation training during that time.
Yeah.
And again, another like severely generous moment where Simon Otto, who used to be the head of animation on the Dragons films, Sean Sexton reached out to him and said, hey, Dave Badgerow is interested in animation. And, you know, God bless him. He was like, I think he's pretty good. It's good enough. We should try him out. And so on the down low on that movie, they kicked me about 30 seconds worth of like small animation.
Which movie was this?
Dragons 2.
This is on Dragons 2. Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
And so it's stuff like for example.
And you worked on Dragons 1 as a layout
artist.
filing artist.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny too. On Dragons 2, I was splitting my time between layout filing and animation. And so.
Oh, interesting. So after the Dragons 2, so you went layout filing artist, art department, back to layout filing.
Yeah.
And then simultaneously now you're doing your training throughout all of that of animation. And on this movie, you did layout filing and animation.
Yeah.
Okay.
They had pulled me back in and they were like, we need your help on this. And so, but then I was, like splitting between those two.
Wow.
And there's this character, Eret, son of Eret.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, I remember.
There's a shot where we meet him for the very first time and he has all these like lackeys with him.
Yeah.
And so I got to animate all the lackeys.
Oh, cool.
And I remember Dave messaging me and he said, it's Dave Torres. That's it. And Dave Torres messaged me and he goes, okay, well, they're angry. That's what they're doing in the shot. They're protecting Eret. They're ready to attack. And he goes, so go for it. Just don't do any upstage animation. And he didn't say that out of
You don't
ego.
want to be a background actor who's like, you know,
Yeah, I
sipping.
thought it was such a great
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
to say.
right.
I was like, I get it. Yeah. I don't think I don't think Dave Torres knows just how much he did for me in my career. I was up at Pixar relatively recently, and he was not in the office, but I went to his office and I wrote him a Post-it note and I said, "Thank you for everything you've done for me."
Oh, nice.
Signed Dave Badgerow. And I'm
Yeah.
like, he has no idea. He doesn't even know.
Right.
I sent him a bottle. He was up in PDI, and I sent him a bottle of wine when it was all over. And I was like, dude,
Because he gave you this opportunity to animate for the
Yeah.
first time on the movie,
Yeah.
which that was your first time animating on a feature film, and it's Dragon's movie.
yeah, I sent it like Simon Otto a bottle of wine and
Yeah.
Sean Sykes, just
Yeah.
because they all had such patience and
Yeah.
faith, you know.
Well, and that's so kind. I mean, that's so nice of you to even think to like do that, to like be appreciative in that way and show to them that, you know,
man.
your appreciation in a small way.
They were
whatever that
making
was.
my dreams
And
come
that's-
true.
Yeah.
I did that mostly as a thing to be like, I hope you know how much this meant to me.
Yeah, of
and
course.
and it's no small thing, you
Right.
know.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Especially within your world of like, this is massive to me. And
Yeah.
like the opportunity to finally get to do the thing that you've wanted to do your whole life.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective, like, and all of this is just to say that I think I had a pretty specific journey to animation. Like,
Yeah.
this is not really usually how it goes these
No,
days.
this isn't the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Which is what's cool about it.
I think while I was doing all this, my thought was, well, I'm laying. Goes back to like the doorman analogy of like,
Mhm.
I'm planting all these seeds. I hope one of these like sprouts, you know, like
Yes.
something that's useful. PDI was closing.
Yeah. Right. PDI DreamWorks.
Rest in peace,
Yeah.
PDI DreamWorks.
So sad.
I remember thinking like, and I was right to assume this. I was
Yeah.
like, well, they're not going to keep me in animation.
Right.
Like
right.
they're about to lay off everybody.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm out of here for sure. And this was the payoff where a buddy of mine named Steve, who worked with me in layout, and that's Steve Childers, and he was now one of the heads of layout for Sony up in Vancouver.
Oh.
And apparently they were like, wasn't there for this, but they were like, well, we're looking to hire some animators. And he was like, I know a guy who's at DreamWorks right now that like really wants to be an animator, and he's actually got some experience under his belt. And so he messaged me and he's like, would you be interested in moving to Vancouver? And I was like, I will move to the moon if you need me to be an animator, you know?
And you apply to Sony, and now you get in there. Do you get in there as an animator? That's what.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I get hired as a character animator there, full-time character animator. And this was for the Angry Birds movie.
Yeah.
And awesome. It was awesome. Like, Sony's rough and tumble, you know, like it's a fast moving studio. And I worked on the Angry Birds movie, Smurfs: The Lost Village, a movie called Smallfoot,
Yep.
and the Emoji Movie.
The Emoji Movie. Yep.
Yeah. And I really, really wanted to work at Blue Sky. I had wanted to work at Blue Sky since they made Bunny, the short film.
Wow.
Like that was this is when I was
Yeah.
at Ringling for
Yeah.
my thing. Like they had when I went to Ringling, they had just won the Oscar. I had banged on the door of Blue Sky many times, and I had met Deb Stone, who used to be the recruiter there,
Yes.
a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
She knew I wanted to work there. And then while I was at Sony, I applied to work on Ferdinand.
Oh,
and
cool.
and I had previously applied to work on Rio. I had previously applied to work on Peanuts. Didn't make the cut.
Mm-hmm.
And then made it on Ferdinand.
Cool.
And that was a whole nother dream come true. Was
Wow.
just like, oh my God, finally I get to see what it's like inside the walls of the fortress, you know?
Wow.
And that was, the animators used to refer to that experience as animation summer camp,
Mm-hmm.
because Blue Sky used to hire a lot of temp animators like
Right.
me every summer to get the movie done. And it was a fun experience. You go there, you get your experience, and you leave, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you meet a lot of great people.
So you literally went from LA and at DreamWorks.
Yeah.
Then you go up to Sony in Vancouver. And now you're going over to Connecticut for Blue Sky.
yes.
Right?
It's fun. Very fun. I loved it. I
Were you
remember
excited to move from place to place too?
Oh,
like
yeah.
throughout, even though the career was obviously exciting. but
Yeah.
Was it cool to be moving to these new places?
I think so. I think for me, it was like all my family's on the East Coast, like your family.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I get to be closer to my
Close to
family.
home.
And as someone, again, like, you know, nobody could have foreseen at that moment that Blue Sky would close. And
Yeah.
I, at that moment, was like, I think this is the end for me. Like, I am going to become staff
Right.
at Blue Sky. I really lobbied for it.
Yeah.
Again, not to toot my own horn here, but like out of the temps that were hired that summer,
Yeah.
I had to ask about this because it felt very weird, but I was getting severely difficult shots, way more complex than temps are supposed to get. And I asked, a lot of the Blue Sky people were DreamWorks people. So I felt comfortable talking to them.
Yeah.
And I went to them and I was like, dude, what's going on with these shots that they're giving me? And they said, they were like, well, I think they're testing you for staff. And if you're interested in staff, you should ask now. And so I talked to Scott Carroll and those folks, the animation supervisors there. And I'm like, I am interested in staying. I have big motivation to stay because my family's here.
Yeah.
Please consider me for this. And they hired no one. So
Right.
they didn't hire anybody that summer, which was fine. I went back to Vancouver.
Yeah.
So, which was also fine because my future wife was there
Hey,
in Vancouver.
There you go. Right.
So
things work out the way they're supposed to.
I went back for Smallfoot, and after Smallfoot was done, I went back to Blue Sky for Spies in Disguise.
Yes.
And this time my at the time girlfriend came with me.
Right. And
my
you met
future wife.
your future wife, Jess.
Yeah. At Sony.
At Sony on what movie?
On Storks.
On Storks.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we met on Storks, and then we really met on Smurfs, which came after. That's when I really got to know her.
Yeah.
So she's also an animator. Yeah.
Yes, she is.
And but then and another tremendous blessing going out for the second time was, this is when we got to meet. I got to meet you and your lovely wife.
Yes.
And that was amazing.
We were all temps.
All temps.
We were all there for the run of the show.
Yeah.
And we were staying at the local Hyatt.
The local
and
Hyatt.
so we were taking the bus back and forth together to Blue Sky Studios.
Yeah.
And that's how we got to know each other and have all the similar interests and all the things.
It was great. We got to have breakfast many times together.
Yes, we did.
Before getting on the bus.
Yep. And dinners in those continental dinners that they had at the Hyatt.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I almost
Soups
never
and
saw
things.
those because I was always doing overtime. I had started talking to DreamWorks again when I was at Sony.
Yes.
And they wanted me to come back for Dragons 3.
Right.
And I said no, because it was not a staff position.
Mm.
And I also wanted to go back to Blue Sky because I thought I was like, maybe my girlfriend and I both get hired, you know?
Yeah.
And I had started that conversation again. And then 8 weeks into being at Blue Sky, and they were like, hey, do you want to come back for Trolls 2? It's a staff position. And I was like, okay. So, yeah. So I abandoned Blue Sky.
Well, it was a staff
DreamWorks.
position. Staff is hard to get in the big studios. It's not something that we talk about that much, but there is a distinction between staff and when you have a temp gig, you know,
absolutely,
because you're only there for a few months, but like now you are getting an offer to be a dream worker, to be someone at DreamWorks full time.
And I was enjoying my time away from Los Angeles, frankly, where I had gone to school in LA. I had worked there a long time.
You spent a lot of time.
Yeah. And I was kind of like, bleh. Like, I like Vancouver. I like New York better than LA. And so I was like, I remember saying that's also why I turned down Dragons 3. Cause I was like, I'm not going back to LA unless it's worth it. You know?
Right.
So I'm like, well, okay. But then that also I'm like, well, I'm moving to Burbank because
yeah.
Burbank is like
Burbank
its own
isn't LA. Burbank is the New Jersey of Los Angeles.
I always call it the Ohio of Los Angeles.
Sure, the Ohio. It's it's the suburban area right outside of the city.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was part of the deal as well.
Yeah.
Someone had said when I was on Spies, they were like, there's a rumor that Disney is going to purchase 20th Century Fox. And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, this is the beginning of the end. I'm like, this place might close. And so it became way less appealing to me.
Right. You started to smell blood in the water.
Yeah. I was like, ugh, like if I get staffed here, that's going to be a dead end.
So then you get this offer now for DreamWorks, right? And then what's that like? Now you're actually back at the studio that you started at, but now you're there as an animator, which was kind of this long journey to get. You had to go to Vancouver and Connecticut and back again to now do the job that you wanted to do at DreamWorks.
Yeah. It's you know, this is very corny to say, but there's the Hollywood tale of like, you have to go halfway around the world in order to just come home again.
And you literally did that.
And that's kind of what it was.
Yeah.
And it was like the end of a movie to me. It was like the end of a biopic when I remember getting my very first time card and it said animator, and I took a photo of it. And I was just like, there it is. I was like, there it is. I would send it to my buddy Matt Flynn because he's a schoolmate of mine who knew just how much I was killing myself to try to become an animator.
Yeah.
And I texted it to him and I was like, it's over. I said it's done. Mission complete. Sony was that too, like that. I considered that to be the great victory, but I was like, well, to come back to the studio that I consider my home base.
Yeah. Homecoming.
And this is also very extraordinarily personal and inside baseball here, but JP Sands, who also came from Blue Sky, by the way.
Yes.
And a very talented animator, and was clearly on the rise when I was still I remember on Guardians, I was like, well, that guy's going to be pretty good. And he had now that we were on Trolls 2, it was his first animation supervisor job. And I remember a very distinct moment where he also was acutely aware of how hard I was trying to get into the department. And my first 2 weeks on Trolls 2, because we were still very early on the movie, was like, everybody do an animation shot of Poppy, like animate her doing anything. And so we all took a shot at it, and it was just to like get ourselves warmed up and to explore the rigs a little bit and break them and stuff like that. And then we all got together and we all watched it in the theater. And I remember distinctly, for me, it was a big moment. I don't know what JP probably doesn't even remember this, but mine came up and we watch it and we all kind of like comment on it and react to it. And we're like, great. And then after everybody kind of like is done talking about it, JP looks at me and he goes, welcome to the department, man. And I remember just being like,
nice.
Oh, that's very kind.
That's awesome. That's kind of full circle because now you're working with him as
he was my boss.
But now he's a director.
Yeah,
and you're working
and now he's directing Bad Guys too.
Yeah.
And so it's even more so.
Yeah.
And Pierre, who's the other director, was one of my mentors when I was he was the one he reviewed my work and stuff like that.
Wow. That's so cool.
And hilariously enough, when I interviewed to come back to DreamWorks while I was still at Blue Sky, it was Pierre on the other end.
Oh.
And I remember him sitting down in front of the camera and he looked at me and he laughed and he went, hey buddy. And he's like, so you ready to come back?
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I told him, I'm like, this is so exciting and so appropriate. I'm like, you're like my teacher. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you come back to DreamWorks. Now you're a full-time animator at DreamWorks. You do Trolls 2.
Croods 2,
which we worked on together because I came back in time for that one.
And anything in the not the bananas.
Anything but the bananas.
The bananas. No. Then Bad Guys. Yes. And it's funny because again, for me, this is again, like I keep mentioning my buddy Matt Flynn, but he's a very special friend of mine. He went through a similar journey of mine, but like he wanted to be a writer, director, head of story.
Right.
And we always joked in school together. I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if we worked at a big studio? But wouldn't it be even more amazing if I was an animator and you were in story?
Yeah.
And so Bad Guys was that, where he told me,
cool.
He's like, you should try to get on Bad Guys because that looks like it's right up your alley. Like that's your kind of film.
Yeah.
And so I really lobbied to get on that film, and thank God it worked out. And there's an awesome moment where I put it on Instagram, I think, where it's like side by side, Matt's storyboards and then my final animation. And I was like, look at that. I'm like, we can't get any closer than that. I'm literally animating the thing that he drew, Yeah. So
that's amazing. That's
so
cool.
That project was
you
like
get to work with your friend after all that.
And like everything about that project was magical because like I got to work with Ben Willis.
Such a great movie too. It's just such a great movie. Yeah.
Ben was very special to me. He was one of the supervisors at DreamWorks. He gave me lots of great feedback. And then he was my boss both on Trolls 2 and on Bad Guys. Yeah. And he was Mr. Wolf on like the supervising animator of Wolf.
Oh, cool.
And I was sort of like animating a lot of Wolf.
Yeah.
And so almost like unofficial like baby Wolf on the project. You know what I mean? And it's just amazing. Like I was so honored that I got to work on that character. And but that movie was also a lot of hard work. And kind of killed me a little bit.
Yeah.
And I am a very outspoken Zootopia fan. And a buddy of mine, here we go. Here's another make friends with a lot of people moment.
Yeah.
Buddy of mine who I worked with at Sony sent me a very transparent message over Facebook. And he was like, hello, we are working on a very specific franchise in short form for
Right.
Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Would you like to come work on it? I think you would be very interested.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I was like, oh my God. And I immediately applied. I think
over at Disney Animation.
Over at Disney Animation. I applied immediately, had an interview. The interview, I think they were really in a hurry, because when I had that interview, they were just like, okay, well, like, are you interested? Like, yes, I'm interested. And they're like, okay, well, you're hired, basically. I was like, okay.
At Disney.
Yeah, well, I mean, and oh gosh, yeah, this keeps coming back up. Like, I'd worked with so many people at so many different animation studios that, and again, I'm extraordinarily humbled to say this, but I was told by my buddy Joe over there, they do this little thing where, like, they send out all the demo reels to everybody in the animation department, and they have everybody rank them basically and say, like, well, who do you guys think should be considered, right? It's a little bit of like almost like electoral college kind of thing, where like all the animators vote, but the supervisors make the final decisions.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And Joe was like, oh, well, you got one of the highest rated reels.
Wow.
And he's like, everybody unanimously thought that you should have worked there. And I was like, Jesus, like, God bless them all, you know, like, I love them all. And then I went over to Disney for what was just supposed to be Zootopia Plus.
Yeah.
And as it often happens over there,
yes,
I was then kept for Strange World.
Yep.
And Once Upon a Studio.
Once Upon a Studio.
Amazing short.
Yep.
Yeah. And then even more unexpectedly, I got loaned out to Imagineering for 4 months. And I got to work on the new Splash Mountain ride, which is now called Tiana's Bayou
which
Adventure.
you worked on with your wife.
With my wife. Like,
which is so cool.
Freaking believable.
Yeah, because she's working at Imagineering.
Yeah.
Now you get hired at Disney Animation.
And then we both got hired and had the same start date at Disney Animation.
And then she gets hired at Disney Animation.
Yeah.
So now you two are both working together as Disney animators at Disney Animation.
Yeah, which makes 3 studios we worked at together as animators.
Right.
Sony, Blue Sky, Disney. Yeah. Insane. And then, it was just, again, another like kismet moment where I remember telling her while we were both at Disney, she was moving on to Wish. Yeah. And I was like, they're going to put me on the Splash Mountain ride. Yeah. Unbelievable. This is going to be I get to work with the Princess and the Frog characters. Yeah. I love those characters. Yeah. And so animating Tiana, I was like, unbelievable. And Lewis, then I end up going back to Dreamworks after that. And then my wife goes back to Imagineering. Right. And then she's like, guess what I'm working on? Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I was like, dude, I'm like, the Badgerows, we get to work on this thing to get stamp our names on it.
We got to go with you guys for a preview screening a little bit ago.
We just went on the like cast and crew preview ride.
And it was amazing. It was so cool to go with you two on the ride that you both worked on, get to see both of your work. Yeah. And it was great. It was so amazing.
It was emotional. Like I said, especially when it got to the last, like what used to be the big zippity doo room, the celebration room. Yeah. I was looking at it, I'm just like, man, like this is so awesome. Well, also because I get to I was watching my wife at home, like Buster on that section forever. Yeah. And just to be like, she
animated a lot of that section.
A lot.
Yeah. She animated the animatronics. Yeah. The physical, the robots.
Yeah. She did Tiana. She did Lewis in that. And more. But Naveen, Yeah. Super cool.
And you did. There's a big screen.
Yeah. There's projections in the ride. Yeah. And the CG animation parts, to make it easier, there's a part with Tiana and Lewis. The only part with Tiana and Lewis. Yeah. And I animated those. So yeah.
And they're looking in at us.
They're large and they're looking through the foliage at you. Yes. So yeah, it's funny to me to think, because I animated several. If you go on the ride multiple times, it's different. It changes. Okay. So I remember thinking, I'm like, well, which one am I going to get?
Right.
You know,
well, that's the one we saw
of my own. Yeah. Which one am I going to get of my own animation? I know all of them. Yeah. So yeah.
So, and then when you were at Disney, you also got to work on the Princess and the Frog ride. And then you also on Once Upon a Studio got to work with one
good
of
old
your favorite characters.
Nick Wilde and Judy Hopps,
right?
Man.
You got to do Nick Wilde and Judy Hopps.
Also talk about like a totally unplanned and like the universe coming together in the right way, where I was not officially on that project. And then the rumor on the floor, on the animation floor, was like, that project needs a lot of work, you know, as in like they have a lot to do and
There's
they don't have enough
so
people.
many characters. It's every character the studio's ever made.
Yeah, so Andrew Feliciano, who was
Yep.
the supervising animator on the CG side, he saw me in the hallway one day and I asked him, I hear that you have a lot of work to do, man, and if you need help, I'm available.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, come back to my office. And then he just said, so I'm going to assign you this section. And it was all the Zootopia characters.
Oh, so cool.
So I got to do Nick, Judy, Bellwether.
Amazing.
Clawhauser.
Yeah.
And then actually Jess, she got to do in that same shot. She knows all the names of these characters, but like the big polar bear, it's like Klaus or something like that.
Yeah.
And then she's holding the mice.
Yeah, and Mr. Big.
Yeah, she got to do Mr. Big and the
Who's basically just a Marlon Brando. But
I hope you do this
Zootopia,
impression on
Marlon
every one of these shows, man.
You know, I've never done it. Till
Really?
Right now, yeah.
Oh my God. It's one of your extreme talents is your Brando.
Thank you.
Jess loves it so much. She talks about it a lot. She's like, Nick's Brando is so amazing. He could play him in a movie.
Yeah, my impressions are face impressions. That's about it. So,
Brando was like this. And then
there it is.
there's
There
this
it
guy.
is.
Pretty good.
Well, pretty good. I've heard things.
Good things. Good things, Dave. Good things.
Oh my God. Man.
Sorry. So
Yeah.
you had to work on
Yeah. So
Once Upon a Studio.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I went to Disney and all my
Your dreams came true.
Because I had very specific dreams.
Yeah.
You know, but as somebody who's maybe a little too big of a fan of Zootopia, and I know all the animators that worked on all the different characters.
Yeah.
I tried to pay tribute to each one of the animators in the performance that I came up with for all the
Wow.
different characters. So like Bellwether, I was referencing Alex Snow, who did some excellent Bellwether animation, and Clawhauser Hyunmin. I was referencing her animation from the movie. So trying to like show my respect for these characters and the different animators in that gigantic shot where they're basically pixels.
Wow, that's so
tiny
cool.
little
But
pixels.
that's why you should be doing the job, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody who cares that much to actually look that deeply into and research, you know, each of these
No research
characters.
was required.
Well, that's true. I mean,
It was all in my head from being a big fan.
yeah, it shows when moments like that, when it means a lot to somebody who's making it, it makes a big difference, and you feel it when you watch movies like that and you watch short films like that. You know?
I remember when I showed it to the directors and they picked up on it. And they were
wow.
they were like, oh, they're like Trent Corey.
Yeah.
He's like, hey man, oh yeah. He's like, I see you. He's like,
Love Trent.
Shunmin's little. She does this in every movie she does.
Yeah.
She puts a little clap,
Mhm.
and so I have Clawhauser doing this in
Great.
in that shot. So
And then after that,
I was starting to work on Wish. This person doesn't work at DreamWorks anymore, so I can probably say this, but it was another cold call, and they said, hey, are you at Disney right now? I said, yeah. And they said, are you in Burbank? Yeah, I'm at Burbank. And then they said, okay. And they literally went, could you quit? And I was like, what? Like, for what? And they're like, we need people on Panda 4. Like, is your contract done? No? Could you quit? Could you come over? And I was like, I'm going to need a day to think about that.
Wow.
So, similar to the Blue Sky thing, though.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where I was like, well, I'm like 99.9 infinity sure that I will be laid off after Wish. I think they are
right
going
at
to
Disney,
do
that
they're-
tends to be the trend.
Yeah,
right.
But this one was brutal. They did a massive layoff. Like they had cut all the fat and were cutting into the muscle now.
Yeah.
Because they were doing some layoffs that I was like, seriously, that person? You know?
Yeah.
And while I was working on, I ended up being for Trolls 3, not Panda. But while I was there, that's when the hammer came down over there. And I started hearing names of people, and I was like, "Oh no!"
Wow.
Like all these staff members got laid off. So
now you're back at DreamWorks.
back at DreamWorks.
Then after that, what was the run? Now you've been at DreamWorks.
Yeah, and yet another very fortuitous run where I was supposed to only be there for Trolls.
Yeah.
And I got to do Trolls, Wild Robot. I got to work a little bit on Dogman, which
Dogman we worked on together.
We both did that.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be laid off after every one of these.
Yeah.
And we've been laying off like a tsunami wave of layoffs at DreamWorks right now. But
it's a hard time in the industry.
It is a hard time everywhere. Like Pixar is suffering, Disney's suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And And so I got pulled onto the Bad Guys 2 short, and it was one of those things where I was like, hey guys, I worked on the first one. If you need somebody who knows someone, like something about Bad Guys, I'm right here. And they somehow, by a miracle, were able to pull a couple of animators, I think 4 animators from the short onto the film.
And now you're on Bad Guys 2.
Yeah. Putting on the old Bad Guys cap again. So.
Yeah. We've gone through your whole career. Would you say that, is there any films that you are like proudest of, or any moments, any shots, anything that like was a really special moment for you?
Yeah, I think that would be Bad Guys. I think Bad Guys 1.
Yeah.
To bring this whole thing full circle to the very first question you asked, which was, what do we do as animators?
Yeah.
And, like if we're doing our job correctly, the characters should really we should make them feel alive, like they're actually there and living in that world. And they should be true to who they are. They should be specific to who they are.
Right.
And I got great advice from Carlos Portolas, who's one of the heads of animation one time, where he said, if you're doing your job correctly as an animator, you should be able to take the animation you did on one character, and if you put it on a second character, it should feel wrong. It should it only fits for that character. Yeah. And I remember when he said that, being like, man, that is such a great goal to strive for. Yeah. And I should be doing that every day, Right. And the specificity is basically it.
Because you're inhabiting the characters, and each character has their own personality and physicality. Yeah. So there's no one size fits all.
Yes. Until another one happens, my greatest accomplishment personally that I've ever done in animation was I've been working on Wolf exclusively the whole movie and trying really hard to understand who that character is. And then there's a shot of him and Diane. It's at the top of Act 3, and it's after he's broken up with the bad guys. He had a falling out with Snake, his best friend. Yeah. And he's sitting in a car in his like jail outfit, and Diane asks if he's okay, and he's not okay. He says, I'm very, very unokay. And I remember getting this is just like the Andrew Feliciano thing. I remember getting the audio from Sam Rockwell on that, like for that sequence, before we were assigned to that sequence, and listening to the audio at my desk like this, and being like, oh my God, like I feel like I understand Wolf enough now. I can see the whole performance in my head. Yeah. Like I know exactly what needs to be done for this shot. I can feel the whole thing. I feel his emotion. He's having a moment where he's super angry and super disappointed and super sad. He's feeling anguish. And I remember acting out at my desk, and I remember just being like, oh, like, I wish I could animate this shot. I didn't want to ask for it. I just was like, do you guys know what I'm working on next? Like, is it this? Yeah. Is it this sequence? And then they were like, okay, here's your shot. And it was that shot. And I was like, oh my God, by total miracle, I got the shot. Kismet. And I went into the reference room. I shot that reference that I had in my head. And when I showed it to the director, that was the only shot that when I showed it to them, I remember Pierre just being like, that's it. Just animate that. And I was like, oh my God, I feel so vindicated that the thing I thought in my head was exactly what they wanted. And I remember when the whole thing was over, I got to have like a heart-to-heart mentor moment with Pierre. But the movie was fully done. And I had coffee with him, and I said, so Pierre, as someone who was once your student, basically, you can tell me, and I assure you I will not be insulted. What do you think of the work I did? Was it all right? And he was like, yeah, man. And he actually told me, to go back to what we said about, he was like, I think this shot you did could have been a lot better. This is the one that frankly didn't work out. And I was happy that he said that shot, because that's how I felt. Right. I was like, that's the one that I wish I had another week to bake on that one. And he was like, but I think that, and again, God bless him. He was like, I think that the shot they did of Wolf in the car might be one of the best Wolf shots in the movie. And I was like, dude, thank you so much. Like I said, I'm glad you feel that way, because that's the one that it's probably the shot I feel most connected to in my whole career. Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's so cool. Have you ever had a moment where you felt like a moment of self-doubt, or a feeling of imposter syndrome?
You're probably asking the wrong guy. And the only reason I say that is because I hate absolutely everything that I make.
No, that's why I'm asking exactly the right person.
Yeah. So every day then.
Right.
There's the reality, frankly, of like, yeah, if you're in an animation role, especially at a big studio,
Yeah.
there's like probably like a couple hundred people that are banging on the door
Totally.
they want your job too.
Yeah, it's a super competitive industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you're in the driver's seat and you're still doing it and they haven't kicked you out yet, like that's, I guess, one way to be like, okay, good. Maybe I'm not doing so bad, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And to that point, what advice would you give?
Yeah,
for your future replacements. No, for up and coming animators who want to.
I would say a couple things. One thing is, I think that a fallacy or like a bad way to think about trying to enter the industry that a lot of young people have right now or in general is that a lot of like students will have their eyes fixated on the big five, you know, like the big studios.
Right.
And they think like, I'm going to work at Pixar. And if I don't get that job first thing out of school, then I'm a failure.
Yeah.
And that is a super unhealthy way to think about it.
Yeah.
Because not only are you setting yourself up for disappointment if it doesn't work out, but, you know, like there's a lot of studios out there. There's a lot of smaller studios.
Mm-hmm.
And something that, you know, like one of my only regrets is like, and easily my biggest regret is like, I wish I had done that. I wish that I had gone straight into animation at a smaller studio and got my feet wet, and just so that I was gaining experience earlier.
Yeah.
It might not be at the best studio you want, but every job you take like that is a step in that direction. Like you're gaining experience and you're gaining knowledge, and like you're building your resume and you're making your mistakes and you're early on and stuff like that. And so I would say like try to get into animation any way you can, even if it's somewhere that you like a commercial house or a startup.
Yeah.
Just to do it, you know, because it's
small game studios. You're
going to push yourself in that direction. You're going to get there. And so I think that's a big one. And I think the other thing is try to be humble.
Yeah.
Like it's, you know, like don't be too humble, like promote yourself.
Yeah.
But like if, you know, like it's a small studio or it's a small industry.
Yeah.
And people
you
remember.
can have confidence and be humble at the same time.
Yeah.
Those two things can be synonymous.
I guess what I'm saying is like, don't be a bully.
Don't be mean.
Don't be mean. Like be nice.
It's pretty easy to not be mean. I would say
you'd be surprised. Don't be mean. There's a lot of
you would think it'd be pretty easy. There's a
lot of egotistical animators out there, and I've met a lot of them. And and I can tell you this firsthand that I'll go to other studios and people those names will travel around.
Right.
And they'll be like, oh, we're not going to hire that person.
No.
You know, like we've heard that they're terrible to work with, you know? So like be nice, be collaborative, be a team player.
Yeah.
And it's only going to make the job more fun, you know?
Sometimes they hire the nicer people.
Yeah.
Even if the mean people are like more talented, it doesn't matter.
One of the supervisors at Dreamworks once said to me, they said, there will always be talented animators out there, but there will not always be the best people to work with. And I said we'd rather have those people because we know that they're
also super talented.
Who are also super talented because they're like they're all going to be really talented if they're coming to Dreamworks probably.
Yeah.
And so like be nice, be collaborative, be willing to learn. That's a big thing. I feel like be willing to accept criticism and input. It's huge. Like other people are like, even if they don't have the best input on your shots, you know, like at least be willing to hear them out and, you know, be willing to understand like, ooh, maybe that's not working, you know, or be able to see the heat map of what you need to work on. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's super valuable. So yeah, I think those are probably the big things.
That's great advice. No, seriously. Thank you. I think that those are all really important things that somebody coming up should really pay attention to, because like you said, this industry is so small. It's all the same people over and over again. Yeah. And it gets smaller and smaller the longer that you're in it. Yeah. And it's a wonderful industry to be in. The people overall are overwhelmingly kind and giving. It's an amazing thing, and it's a rare thing, you know.
The Dreamworks team right now in animation, I can say, is probably one of the best teams teamwork wise that I've ever seen at any studio I've ever worked at. It is astounding. I feel so fortunate to be there at this moment in time.
Yeah.
That's the payoff for like being nice in your career. You get to eventually maybe work on a team
Work
like
with
that
nice
where they're
people.
all nice,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hey, put out what you want brought back to you,
Yeah.
right? Golden rule.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
Do unto others as you want unto
Be
yourself.
the animator that you want to work with, you know?
Yeah.
So,
There it is right
Mhm.
there. I want to talk briefly about something that is a fun thing outside of your job, which is
hobbies.
hobbies.
Yeah.
Oh, a
A
hobby.
hobby.
I love to
Hobbies.
sing and play the music.
We're going to talk about tiki cocktails.
Tiki
Oh,
drinks.
very interesting.
Oh,
very nice.
very interesting. So tiki is something that is a big part of your life.
Yes.
Tiki bars, tiki cocktails,
Yeah.
mixology.
Mhm.
It's all encompassed
It's
in
the spirits world, yeah.
So you do this show
Oh yeah.
called Cocktail Fridays,
Yes.
which you bring the same amount of enthusiasm that you do to your job and to the excitement of knowing exactly what, you know, Nick Wilde and Judy Hopps, what their animators did, and all that specificity you bring to your Cocktail Friday show,
Indeed.
which is amazing. And it's what makes me excited about it. And it's what makes a lot of people who watch it excited, because you are sharing something that you think is fun and cool, and you love the drinks that you're making,
Mhm.
and you're sharing your excitement with people. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's really special about it and about you. And, you know, me and my wife and friends of ours have all gotten into tiki culture and tiki bars and all that stuff solely because of you, because of your excitement. It has rubbed off on everybody else.
It's
And
infectious. We're
it
bringing
is
more folks into the fold.
it's
Yeah.
infectious, and it's fun, and it's something that there's a history attached to it, which also is something that you can be appreciative of, you know.
Yeah.
And the same thing with animation. So there's a lot of crossovers. But all that to say, Cocktail Fridays,
Yeah.
what has it been like for you to make this show and to get to like share your favorite cocktails?
It's super educational, just to really deep dive into the history of all these cocktails, where they come from.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if you're into spirits and that kind of, and mixology, you get to learn a lot about how these recipes come together, and you start to get to learn about how to make your own, and, you know, what makes something good or bad, or how to spin it and what direction you want to spin it in and stuff like that. So it's now getting to the point where like the show is teaching us a lot about mixology. And
That's so cool.
yeah, and it's fun. Like now when people come over, we can be like, well, what do you like? You know, and we can
make 200 drinks.
Yeah. I think our home bar, we can do something like 80 recipes at this point.
Wow.
But yeah, it's fun. It's a hobby. It's a fun thing to learn about, and it's good to have like something that's creative, that's outside of work as well.
Oh yeah.
So and even though the fan base is very small, you can check it out, folks, at Cocktail Fridays on
check
YouTube.
It out.
See if you like it. But it's fun to get feedback from like there's a surprisingly large mixology YouTube community, you know, and you get to become friends with all those people and learn from those folks. So
Another small community.
Exactly. All in the interest of education.
Please watch Cocktail Fridays. Please like, subscribe, comment, all the things.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for doing this. Seriously, it's been so much fun. It's been so informative. It's just been great.
It's such an honor to come on your show. I mean, I hope this show does great as well. Like this is your, you know, outside of work creative endeavor.
Thanks
for putting this together.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to get to share all of my friends, you know, amazing stories and their journeys all the way from the beginning to where they are now and being successful in their career. And it's an amazing thing. And, you know, it's something that I think is really useful for people out there who are wanting to do the same jobs or just to be inspired to follow whatever their dream is. So it's cool to see people who followed their dreams and have reached their goals.
Cool. I hope I said something smart in there somewhere.
You said many, many smart things. So
let's hope so. Well, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Seriously, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you guys so much for watching the show. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. And please join us next time for our next friend. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of Nick's Friends in Film. If you like the show, please like, comment, and subscribe below, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Have a great day.